lately, I've been thinking about 3 different topics that we can talk about on our
Mhm.
podcast. And one is being introverted in the extroverted world. Number 2 is raising your parents. And number
Yes.
3 is dating after 30. Is it working? So,
Right.
yeah. So, which topic do you want to talk about today?
So I think for today, I would like to talk about dating in your 30s. And not only just dating in your 30s, but just relationships in your 30s. Because I feel like it's just a whole different dynamic compared to in my 20s. And
Mm-hmm.
you can attest to this because you knew me in my 20s. You've known me for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I used to be so gullible. Like in the beginning in terms of dating and meeting people. Like I remember it was this guy, I had just started college, and it was this guy that was like, "Oh, come meet me in my room, we can do homework together and all this stuff." And I genuinely was like, "Oh, that's cool. That sounds great." I had no other outside thought about that.
Right.
Um, and it wasn't until hindsight later when, I come back to the dorm and I'm like, yo, I just was at this dude's room, in this dude's room, chilling, thinking he wanted to do homework, but it was something completely different that he was thinking about doing compared
Yeah.
to me. And I remember you telling me like, you didn't, you're gullible, like, because I was super gullible. Like in the beginning with dating and stuff, I had no experience with guys. I didn't date that much in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was with maybe one or two people. But for the most part, I didn't date in high school. I didn't really develop relationships with men or other, or romantic relationships in general. I didn't really even have friendships like that too much in high school. A lot of it was all, surface level. So I was very like gullible and naive when it came
Uh-huh.
to dating or when it came to getting to know other people and just relationships in general. And I
Right.
still remember to this day that it was just like, it's late at night, you went to a dude's room, like he probably was expecting, something else. But in my head, I'm like, la 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 la. They're like,
Right.
hey, we just studying. Like what
Right.
like what?
Yeah.
But it's like, that was kind of my first kind of learning experience in terms of that people don't always tell you up front what they want, and you sometimes think because I thought, hey, he really just genuinely wants to hang out and do homework, but in his mind it was something completely different. And that's when it was
Yeah.
kind of a reality check for me that you got to be careful of who you open yourself up to or who you talk to or who you get to know or build those relationships with. And I have always been a very guarded person when it comes to like getting close to someone, but also naive because I always wanted to have relationships with people or relationships in general, um, and getting to know people and that type of connection. But I was very inexperienced in my 20s in terms of dating, in terms of which I know a lot of people are because you're young, you don't know,
Yeah.
you don't know everything. You think you do, but you don't
Right.
know
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Um, so it was like dating for me early on. It was a whole just being inexperienced and not really understanding a lot about even when somebody liked me. I never could tell when people liked me until you had to be throw a dart straight in my forehead and be like, hey, I like you. Like that's
Right. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
like this is not, because I was very oblivious to stuff like that. I just didn't recognize it. Now, if you
Mhm.
fast forward now to being in my 30s, it's so many things I would have told myself back in my 20s that, it's okay not to know. It's okay to figure it out. It's okay to take your time. Like, you don't have to be in a rush to find the person that you're supposed to be with.
Yeah.
It's okay to figure yourself out first.
Yeah.
Because now, fast forward, it's like now I'm figuring myself out now,
Mm-hmm.
and my relationships are different now, where it's like, okay, who is this person really? Is it more than just the physical attraction or just the, we have a good time, we do a lot of we have fun together. It's like now you start thinking about the more deeper stuff, like, can we handle conflict together? Can we, are
Yeah.
we compatible in that way? Can we, go beyond just friendship or mere, I like you and I love you type of thing, but also like showing up for that person when they need you in a
Mhm.
crisis, or, certain things like that, where in your 20s and stuff, you're just like, you can show up for me or you can not show up for me. I'm good. Or at least for me,
Right.
I'm like, I was really hyper independent. So I'm just
Mhm.
like, I don't need anybody. I got this. If you
Yeah.
want to come along on the journey, that's cool. If you don't, that's cool. But I
Yeah.
didn't realize, it wasn't until later in life
Yeah.
that I learned other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
so, yeah, like you said, uh, dating in your 30s, not just dating, but also having relationships, platonic relationships, co-worker relationships, family relationships in your 30s is totally different than when you are in your 20s. Like you said, a lot of times we are naive, right? We haven't built
Hmm. Yeah.
that emotional maturity. And in our 20s, you will accept a lot of things, right? Like you will accept so many things. And by the time you're 30, like you're like over it. You
Right.
know how to smell the BS. You know how, like, you see the red flags, and we are both over the age of 35. So even
Hmm.
as you even get older, and by the way, guys, this is our first episode, and I want to wish
Yes.
happy early birthday to Nadine because her
Oh, thank
birthday
you.
is actually coming up. But
It,
yeah, like you get so used to dealing with crap in your 20s that by the time you're 30, you're like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this anymore. Specifically,
right.
I can speak on, I have been in relationships as you know, I was married.
Hmm.
And just to kind of go down that rabbit hole just a little bit, like some people find themselves in marriages when they are not emotionally mature. You don't know what you want, you
Yeah.
don't know what you're looking
Right.
for. You have an idea. Some people want to be a spouse but don't know how to be a spouse. Some people want a relationship but don't know how to be in a relationship. And I know that's something you can speak on too with your situation that
Yeah. Yeah.
just
For sure.
happened, being in a relationship and the person really don't even know how to have a relationship, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or they're not willing to, they constantly make excuses like this is my first
Right.
time doing this. Um and so
Yeah.
yeah, like just to go back to that. I mean, by the time you're 30, you're over the bull crap. You're just over it, and you know how to just see the red flags for what they are. Because a lot of times you want to overlook it, right? Because you want to be in a
Yeah,
relationship,
you do.
especially in your
You
20s.
do.
You want to be in a relationship, but by the time you're 30, you're like, shoot, I can do this by myself. Like, I like leave me alone. You know what I mean? Like, I can leave this life
Right.
by myself because there is really nothing that you can't do that money can't buy. Like, I can go and,
Hmm.
I mean, to be honest, you got to
Yeah. Right.
adopt a few kids and there you go. Like, you really don't have to have a partner.
Hmm.
Not to say that having a partner isn't great, but I know there are people that I actually feel that way, especially women after dealing with so many or going through so many bad relationships. Is like they just default to just being
Hmm.
single and fostering children or adopting children and just being single because they're tired of the bullcrap. But
Right.
yeah, regarding coworker relationships, friends, and family, yeah, again, saying no gets easier. Having boundaries
Hmm.
gets easier in your 30s because you
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I really do not care what you think. And I really, like, it is what it is. You don't pay my
Yeah.
bills, I pay my bills. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And so back to circling back to what I was alluding to about your situation that just happened.
Hmm.
Would you care to expound
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah. Like, I feel like, sometimes it's hard for us to admit when we don't know things or we don't understand things about relationships, and that, you know, we ignore a lot of what maybe red flags, or, like, you ignore a lot of things because it feels good at the time. Like, it's like everything feels right. The relationship feels right. I like being with this person. I enjoy this person's time. I enjoy this person in their personality, all these things. But sometimes it's not so much about the enjoyment of those things, but also understanding who you are and what your needs are. And I think for me, with my recent relationship, is that I was with a person that was a really great person who I loved. It was just that our needs were different. And the things that I needed, I didn't learn until later on that I needed those things. It was like I didn't come in the relationship knowing, oh, I need, somebody who is present emotionally, or, oh, I need somebody who is, present physically. I need somebody who can do those things. I came in with, like, I really like this person. I never really been in a long-term relationship longer than maybe 3 to 6 months. And this person was the first person that was my long-term relationship that, you know, that we ventured into the possibility of marriage and things like that. And it was just like, but at the time, I overlooked a lot of things in terms of my own feelings, and because I didn't understand my own feelings, and I was a person who was, which you might be able to attest to, is that I was an avoidant person when it came to your feelings. How do you feel about this? Oh, I'm cool. I don't feel anything. I'm good. There's no problem. Everything is okay.
Yeah.
And so, but I didn't know that about myself until, I started doing some self-reflection and trying to understand certain things as to why I do certain things in my relationships. Like, why do I feel the need to want to talk all the time? Or why do I feel the need to have, a certain type of communication, or things of that nature? Because I started telling myself, oh, you're just being too needy. Like, you don't need somebody to do all those things. But it wasn't until the realization that, no, you're pushing down your actual feelings. Like, you actually need these things, and it's okay to need, time or quality time with someone. It's okay to need conversation, that stimulates you. It's okay to need, all these things. And just because the person you're with may not be able to give those things to you, it doesn't mean that person is a bad person or anything, or you're a bad person or anything, or that there's anything wrong with that person. It just means you're not compatible.
Yeah.
And it was like, but a lot of us will stay in relationships knowing we're not compatible because we really do care. We really did love the person. We really feel like we can make this work. Like, I'm a person that grew out of being an avoidant person into, kind of more of an anxious kind of person, where if there's a problem, I want to fix it. Where before, Crystalyn can attest to this, that we were roommates, and there were times where there were conflict that it was like, I did not want to talk about this. Like, everything is good. Why we have to, address this? Like, why can't we just be cool? Like, what's the problem? There's no problem. And it was like, I avoided it. And it was like, to the point where, I mean, it was times, and this is back when MySpace was popular, guys. So y'all can guess our age. But it was like, we would have a conflict, and we were in the same room, but I could not acknowledge the conflict with Crystalyn because I was so like, okay, I don't want to make it into something bigger. I don't want it to be this big deal. I don't want it to turn into an argument, and so I was always like, oh yeah, okay, I'm good. I understand you feel that way, but I'm good. And it was like, no, you're actually just avoiding how you feel. And it wasn't until maturing more and getting into this relationship with someone that I realized there were things that I defaulted to that you cannot default to in a relationship. Like, you can't not communicate with that person when you're upset. You can't, I mean, you can, but it's not going to solve it. You can't not express how you feel. You can't keep pushing those things down because at some point it's going to be exposed. And it's like, the closer you get to someone, the more you see their faults, and the more you see, that exposure occurs where they're basically holding up a mirror to you and saying, hey, this is what I see. Your insecurities and things like that. And it's like, you have to be prepared, or either to a place where you can accept, like, okay, that is something I do. Like, for me, I used to get defensive a lot about when people would criticize me, or I felt criticized, or somebody would
Mhm.
bring me a problem about myself. And
Yeah.
so in my relationship, it was, hard not to default to getting defensive if he had something that he wanted to say that he may have felt, or if, vice versa. It was like, okay, I really need to listen. Who's telling me this? Who's talking to me? Does this person love me? I need to listen from that, that point of view, instead of listening from the insecurity that I had, which
Yeah.
is like, I want to be liked. I want to please people. I want to make sure people are good in my life. I want them to be happy. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until, I realized in my relationship that I was the one that was unhappy, because I was pushing down my
Mhm.
feelings of things that I needed, because I wanted this other person to be happy, and I wanted to make
Yeah.
them happy. I wanted, to have this future with them. And it wasn't until, I realized, like, I'm putting a lot of pressure on them to do things that they really feel like they cannot do. And
Mm.
it's like, instead of doing that, it's like I had to make the decision that, okay, this relationship just isn't right for me.
Yeah.
It hurt. It sucks. Cause it's like, you've been with that person, you know that person, you love that person, you care about them, and realizing that, your dynamics just don't fit with each other. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean he's a bad person or I'm a bad person. I love him, and I will love him to this day. But,
Yeah.
it's just realizing that you have to let certain people go once
Yeah.
you grow. Like, when have that self-awareness about yourself, that, okay, these are things that I need. These are, things that I'm always gonna need, and I don't want to put you in a position, if you really feel like you cannot meet that need,
Mhm.
that you feel like I'm changing you or making you do something that you can't do. And it's
Yeah.
like, because I don't want to be that person in a relationship,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And so, it was a hard lesson in terms of, I'm glad that I learned more about myself and understanding my needs, and that I'm able to show up better in future relationships, because I know, hey, I need this, or hey, this is
Mhm.
something that I have to have, and it's
Yeah.
not, and it's okay. It's like, for me, it's hard to accept that it's okay to
Yeah.
have these needs, because I feel like, especially if I feel like my need is hurting someone else, or if I feel like what I'm me putting myself first is almost in a way hurting someone else too. And
Mhm.
it's like, that was a hard lesson that I'm still learning. It's like,
Yeah.
how to even prioritize yourself in relationships, because you have to, because otherwise resentment is going to build. And if
Mhm.
you keep going in that relationship knowing that there's stuff that's off, or either you feel a certain way and you feel
Yeah.
like you can't express that to your partner, um, it's just going to lead to, your relationship becoming something you didn't want, which is disconnection, and just like, lack of understanding, and, you know, and I just had to learn, like, one of my friends, or one of our mutual friends, she had told me, it's not about being good or bad. It's about whether or not your values align, or
Yeah.
whether or not your priorities align. And sometimes they don't. And making, that observation, and moving on from that, and practicing what my sister calls is radical acceptance of, like,
Mhm.
okay, I have to accept, I cannot change this person. I can't control this person. I can't do none of these things. I can only control myself, how
Yeah.
I feel, and my actions. And I just have to accept that this person is who they are,
Mhm.
not the potential of them, not the person I see them becoming, not the person that I know they could be. All of those things. It's like, no, you have to accept that this is this person. And
Yeah.
if that person, the way that they are right now, does not fit with you, then it's best that you part ways, even
Yeah.
if it's hard. And
Yeah.
that was like a shot to my like heart, because I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's the whole premise of, dating in your 30s. It's like you're wiser now. And
Yes, yes,
it's easier for you to let go of something that no longer serves you, right? Like, and
yeah, right,
and
right,
honestly, some people would probably say, well, is that person being codependent on the other person?
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
and now codependency exists, but what you're explaining and what I've witnessed, because guys, this is my best friend, so I've known her for a long time, and we know each other for a long time, and so we talk
Yeah.
about things, even if we miss talking for months, we always pick up where we left off. But in
Yep.
her situation, it's like what she's asking is not unrealistic. It really isn't. Uh, It's
Mm.
just asking it from a person that's not able to give it, and
Yeah. Right.
that's
Right.
okay. There's
Exactly. Right.
somebody for him just like it's somebody for her, and even
Mm-hmm.
if the person decided to change, to be, to
Mm-hmm.
not only to suffice what she's asking, because that's not the thing, that's not,
Yeah. I
because
don't want you to
you
change
don't
for
want to
me. I
force,
want you to change for you.
somebody. Yeah, you're not trying to force
Right.
somebody to change for you. But if that person came to a recollection like, oh man, wow, I am avoidant and I need to fix this. And if this person
Mm-hmm.
fixed that and came back around and they got back together, I'm sure the relationship would work.
Yeah. Right.
But in your 30s, like I'm saying, like you're a lot wiser and you realize like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this person just cannot give me what I need, what fulfills my soul, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's
Yeah.
somebody for him,
Mm-hmm.
and there's somebody for you. Somebody that can give you what you need, and you can give them what they need. And there's somebody, because here's the thing: people think that, because you mentioned being avoidant earlier in your early years,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like you said, it's not about a person being bad or good. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a way of coping throughout life, how you have been throughout
Right. Coping
life.
mechanism. Yep.
So
Yep.
you were not a bad person. Like, we've known each other what, since 2006, I think,
Yeah. Right.
and
Since
I've
yep.
never known you to be a bad person. It's just that you had this characteristic that you finally realized, like, hey, I
Yeah. Was
fix
yeah.
this. You know what I mean?
Because
And
I thank God so much that y'all still stuck around when
um,
I was defensive or when I was like, you could not talk. Nadine's just like, just forget it. That means she is done. Don't say
mhm,
nothing to her. She ain't want nothing to do with the conversation. She ain't
yeah,
hearing nothing you got to say. But I
yeah,
was like, y'all stuck through that, even knowing that, even with my sister, because she actually was the one that kind of was the catalyst that kind of showed me, like, held up a mirror to me and was like, hey,
mhm,
it was like one day I asked her to be my accountability for like applications and stuff. And she calls me and she's like, hey, how's it going? How did you do this? Did you do
yeah.
that? She's asking all these questions.
Remember this
And
conversation?
immediately I got defensive and was like, what, you think I'm not doing anything? You think I'm not trying? And
Yeah,
she said none of those words
right.
whatsoever. And all she did was ask me, did I fill out the application that she sent? And
Uh,
so she, so then she looks at me, or she's on the phone with me, and she's like, you getting real defensive right now. She was like, you just getting real defensive. And so
right,
I took a step back and paused and was like, yo, she's right. I just went in on her.
right,
Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm doing the applications. I'm doing the best that I can. Immediately just defending myself.
right.
And she's just like, chill out. Like, and I bet she probably was wondering, like, what did she hear? Because I did not say
Yeah,
you weren't doing anything. And so I really
mhm,
had to take inventory of myself and just really
yeah,
look at myself and say, you're the problem. Like, you are getting
mhm,
upset over something that you over nothing, because she didn't even attack you. She didn't do
mhm,
anything. She did what you asked her to do, which
yeah,
was hold you accountable. And because I had, an issue with being held accountable, because that means like, oh, okay, it is things that I could be doing better and working on better. That when somebody brings it to your attention, sometimes it's like, man, they just don't,
mhm,
you want to have an excuse, or you want to be able to say, you want to defend yourself. And it
yes,
was like, in that moment, I realized, wow, I have been doing this for years, of
yeah,
like, just could not listen to someone else tell me something about myself. And
mhm,
I was like, I remember times in college and stuff, just like not being able to hear what people were saying, just not having that empathy of understanding that other people's feelings. I
Mm.
mean, I can listen to you, I could validate how you're feeling, all those things, but it's like
Yeah.
when it came to holding myself accountable about how I was feeling about something, it was a coping mechanism because it was like, part of it, it starts as a child. I mean, it's not that your parents are horrible people or anything like that. It's just that I had one parent who was emotionally safe and one who wasn't. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned early on that if I become low maintenance and be like, oh, I don't have, any feelings or I don't feel strongly about anything, I'm indifferent,
Yeah.
that protected me. It meant that I don't have to worry about getting yelled at for something, or I don't have to worry about somebody being upset with me, or, and I was a very much a people pleaser. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like, I want people to like me. I want people to accept me. And it wasn't until I had that reality check that I realized, like, no, like you're avoiding things. You're
Yeah.
avoiding how you feel. And when you show up in relationships avoiding things, it affects your partner in a different way that you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you shut down, or when I used to shut down, or I used to be like, oh, I have nothing to say, or I don't want to hear what you have to say, or I need to go, I need space and time and all that. I convinced myself like it was like, I just need that to process, which some of it is, but I would never come back to the conflict to resolve it. It was just like, this is a lot. You're being a lot. I need to go because you're
Yeah.
being a lot. And then it was like, once it clicked, it was like, oh no, like you're not being a lot. You're valid in how you feel. You
Mm.
have feelings. I did something that upset you, or either you're holding me accountable for it, and you have a right to do that. And I
Yeah.
need to listen, even if I don't understand it at that time. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like that growth just all of a sudden, because when it was done to me, where the person shut down, or you feel rejected, you feel abandoned, you feel like,
Mm-hmm.
why is this person treating me differently, and they don't even see it because
Yeah.
I didn't see it, and it was just like I had to realize, like, but then I also learned that we're responsible for our healing. We're not responsible for our trauma, but we are
Yeah.
responsible for our healing and how
Mm-hmm.
we self-reflect and, realize those things, and
Yeah.
the work that we do to correct that, or to, heal from that, so we can show up better. Otherwise, you're going to, you'll have the same excuse, like the same excuses I had. Like, it's just me. That's just my personality. I
Yeah.
don't have feelings. I don't, I don't have anything to say about that. I don't, when really it's like, I have something to say, but I'm afraid it's going to upset you. I'm afraid it's going to push you away from me. I'm afraid that you're not going to like me if I tell you how I feel.
Yeah.
Because that's what I felt. But fast forward is like, I had to realize too that even though I came to that realization, that doesn't mean everyone will. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean everybody's going to go do the work that it takes to get to that, because
Yeah.
it's hard work. It's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy looking at yourself and being like, dang, this is off. Like, this is wrong. Or this is something that I didn't know I did. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
hurting people doing this. And, it's a lot because it
Yeah.
took years. Like, I'm in my 30s now.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
now figured this out maybe about 6 months ago or so. So it's very
Yeah.
recent.
Yeah.
And, but
Yeah.
yeah, I know I just went on a tangent, but yeah, it just
No,
understanding it, man. It's
and that's good
crazy.
though. It's good though because I mean, it took you years and it took you a long-term relationship. You know what I mean? To
Yeah, it
come
did.
to
It
the
did.
realization of some things, and sometimes it's just
Right.
how it happens. I mean, I know there's people who have not been in a relationship, right? And
Yeah.
they're
Hmm.
fortunate enough to have not gone through any trauma, and they had a perfect life or whatever it is. No one has a perfect life, but you know what I mean.
No,
Um,
I know what you mean.
and
Yeah.
so they don't have anything that they need to work through. But unfortunately, there are some people like us who
Hmm.
have to go through, a long term
Right.
failed relationship to teach us something about ourselves. Because
Right.
you don't learn about yourself just from being alone, being secluded. Like you learn
Right. You
from
don't.
being in a relationship or being around family or being, around friends and stuff like that. So
Yeah, through connection.
uh,
You learn it definitely through
yeah,
connection.
yeah, and I'm very proud of you because one thing I remember telling you, I told you, I said you could save yourself from a divorce.
Yeah, you did.
Like, just being honest, because
Mm-hmm.
you could have gotten married and, down the line ended up getting a divorce like I
Yeah,
did. You know
right.
what I mean? So you
Because
saved
I
yourself.
definitely didn't see it. When you said it,
Mhm.
it was like I wasn't in a place to hear it. Because I
Yeah.
really was like, no, we're working on this. This is going to
Mhm.
get better. It's just
Mhm.
something we could work on. It's just something we could work on. I'm
Yeah.
so hyper vigilant on
Mhm.
feeling like I need to fix it, that it can be
Yeah.
fixed,
Right.
until I realized that it's okay that he can't give me this. This is who he
Mhm.
is. I either accept this or I don't. And when
Yeah.
I realize that I can't accept it because I'm not going to be happy, and I'm going to make you unhappy whether you see it or not. You're going to
Yeah.
be unhappy too, because you're
Yeah.
going to feel all this pressure on you to be something that you, or to give something that you feel like you cannot give.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
your counsel really helped, because being a person that who has been married and been through your situations and
Mhm.
understands, different, and have had different relationships, not just,
Mhm.
you got family relationships, things like that, where you learn a lot from those things.
Yeah.
And it's like you have to assert what your needs are. First, you
Yeah.
need to find what your needs are. Let me just say that I didn't realize,
Yeah.
what are my needs? What do I actually need? And then you need to assert those needs. And like you were talking about earlier with setting boundaries, and you need to set boundaries for yourself, and
Yeah.
what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, what you're willing to
Mhm.
accept, and what you're not willing to accept.
Yeah.
And if that person cannot meet that boundary, then, your answer is clear. It's
Yeah.
hard. I'm not saying like, oh, I knew the answer and it was easy to
Mhm.
just be like, oh, this is not for me. It was like,
Yeah.
no, I stayed in this because I wanted to believe it was for me. And it
Yeah.
was just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you're doing all
Mhm.
these things to try to
Mhm.
fix it, to
Yeah.
going to therapy, going to this, doing that, reading books,
Mhm.
sending videos, doing
Yeah.
like, and I had to realize, Nadine, you gotta fall back. You're doing too much. When a person is telling you they cannot do this, they cannot give this to you,
Mhm.
you have to accept that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I say that, I say that to myself, guys, because
Mhm.
I was just like, you have to accept this. You have to accept
Yeah.
this. You have
Yeah. Because
to.
you have to accept people for who they are. Because if you don't,
Right,
then you start looking at them, you categorizing them as good or bad.
right,
Because you
right,
haven't accepted them as who they are. Just because they're that way doesn't make them bad. But if
right,
you yourself are looking at them, you're resenting them for not giving.
right,
They're not giving you what you desire. Now you're resenting them
right,
that they're a bad person. It has nothing to do
right.
with that, because guys, I've met this person, and this person is not a bad person. In my
No,
eyes,
no.
me and AD have had conversations. You know what I mean? This person is not a bad person. I'm just proud of her for realizing, that what she's asking can't be given, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
right.
That's okay,
And
because
that's
there's
what I tried
somebody.
to, yeah,
Yeah, there's
right. I'm
somebody
glad you
out there.
reiterate that, because it is okay.
Yeah,
It's
and there's
okay.
and like I said, if the situation reconciles itself, it, the person decides that they're ready to give what's been asking, or they have a come to Jesus and they change or whatever it is,
Hmm.
and stop being an avoidant, like, things can be reconciled. It's not the end of the world. I'm
Right.
just
It's not the
proud
end of the world.
of her
Right.
for choosing herself, you know um so yeah, just to end, because guys, we try to keep these episodes
Yeah.
fairly somewhere in the middle, not short but not too long. We know attention spans are very short these days with you millennials and everybody.
Right.
We try to keep
Right.
the episodes around 30 minutes. But if you guys want longer episodes, please let us know.
Yeah. Please
Um,
let us know.
yeah, so we also want to know too, about your experiences. Tell us something. Write us, email us, let us know what you have experienced in your 20s versus in your 30s. We want to hear about the hard decisions that you had to make if you had to let a relationship go, whether it be platonic, intimate, coworker, family, friend, boyfriend, whatever. We want to hear about it. But
Right.
yeah, so stay tuned, because in our next episode, we either are going to be talking about being an introvert in the extroverted world,
Right.
or raising your parents. So stay tuned for the episode.
Yeah, stay
And
tuned. Stay
yeah,
tuned.
yeah. So we appreciate you guys so much, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Okay, bye.
All right. Thank you guys.